Hi, and welcome to the first video on data analysis using dplyr. dplyr is one of the main packages that's contained in tidyverse, and we're going to use this to transform or wrangle our data. And this is going to be one of the most important packages we're going to cover. So you can see that there's quite a few topics here that we're going to go through. So we'll go through them one at a time, and there'll be exercises for most of them for you to reinforce what you're learning. Now, dplyr has functions that operate on rows, on columns, and on groups of rows. We'll look at some of the functions we'll look at, or we call them verbs, are filtering, slicing, and arranging, work on rows. Filtering gets a set of rows based on the values of the columns of the variables. Slice will choose rows based on their location, and arrange will change the order of the rows. Then for columns, we will have select, which includes or excludes columns, rename, to rename the names, change the names of the variables or the columns, mutate, to add new variables or columns or transform existing ones, and relocate, which changes the order of the columns. Then to deal with, we'll get into each of these on its own, so don't worry about memorizing what they do right now. You'll get very familiar with all of them. To deal with groups of rows, we'll use group by and summarize. Group by will group by one or more variables. So when you think, I want to do something for each of these things, think group by. And then summarize will collapse a group into a single row, and you can use this for generating summary statistics. Now, as we go through, we will use the pipe operator. Now, the pipe operator is going to pull a lot of different actions into one stream of thought. So, all of my dplyr functions will take a data frame or a tibble as the first argument. And so, in order to save you time in typing and make it more readable, we are going to use this format where X gets piped into some verb of Y. And what happens inside of mgritter, which is where this pipe operator lives, is it turns it into that verb with the first argument being the thing that was piped in. And then the results then get piped into the next step. So you'll get a lot of examples of that. And just to give credit where credit's due, I've taken all the stuff in this lecture from these two websites. So there are two different vignettes on dplyr. So we'll start out by looking now. The input is going to be my data frame for all my dplyr verbs. And you'll have other outputs, other inputs that describe your selection criteria, and you will be looking at an output which is also a data frame. We're going to start just library in tidyverse, library in the package NYC Flights 13. If you don't have it installed yet, it will prompt you to install, so you may have to go and install the package first and then library it in. If you look at the head of flights, you can see it'll show you the first several variables, and it'll show you what the other variables are that are down there. You can also just look at the names of the flights data set. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to my console here so we can look at names of flights from here. Okay. So these are the names of all the variables that are in my flights data set. And we're going to use this flights data set quite a bit for a lot of our examples in this lecture. Now, if I do, I'm going to make it shorter just so I don't have to keep typing flights. All right, so I'm just going to call it FL. So I'm just naming the data set that. Now, there's another package that has flights in it, and it's called H flights, and these are flights from Houston. So if I looked at H flights, its flights are called H flights and not flights. Oh, but my goodness, look what happened here. Why did it just scroll past my screen? Well, that's because it's not a tibble. So let's make it a tibble. So let's do underscore, I think, tibble. And I'm going to rename it. So I'm going to call that H-flights. Now if I do H-flights, you see it will show more nicely. It won't scroll past my screen. I can still see the variable names. It tells me what type each variable is and so forth. Okay, so we prefer to use tibbles just so that it doesn't scroll my screen too much and I can see what type each variable is. Okay, we will stop here with video 1 and come back and talk about lookup tables. So we'll do that for video 2. Okay.